Hey everybody, this is Ari in the Air. Welcome back to the channel. Stoked you're here. I have paraglided all over the world, and I have seen one launch mistake in particular come up over and over and over in every skill level of pilot, from the highest level competition paragliders to people who are brand new students. Today, I want to tell you what this launch mistake is. I want to show you some videos of people doing it and how to remedy it. So we'll talk about how to remedy it and also what drills you can practice on your own to make sure that this just becomes embodied total muscle memory so you never do this. As well as I'm going to throw in a little high wind scenario hack at the end, okay? You guys ready? Here we go.
See ya.
Okay, so if you watch these videos and you like them, consider becoming a patron on Patreon. That really helps make this whole thing go around. Patreon.com/Ari in the Air. So let's first start by looking at a couple of clips of this launch mistake. Okay, the biggest launch mistake, what is it? In a few words, it is not moving your feet. All too often, paraglide pilots will pull up their glider as if they're an anchor on the ground. And when they do that, they lose the ability to really control the glider. Where your harness is likely the single strongest input on the glider, even more than pulling on the A's, even more than pulling on the brakes. It's moving where the harness is because that controls all of the tension on all of the lines. So I have a couple of clips here that are going to show you exactly what I mean. So in this first clip, Orange Glider Guy, this is footage from a YouTube channel called Air Diction. He pulls up the glider, and it's not a bad pull-up, but if you see, he's kind of going to the right here towards these other pilots, and he doesn't want to do that. The problem is that his glider is pointed that way, and he's already, if you see here, you can already see that he's out of alignment with the center of his glider. So what he really needs to do is run his body to the right, which will slack the right side of the lines and tension the left side of the lines, allowing the glider to turn back to the left. But since he's afraid of running into this guy on the right, he anchors his feet. And what happens? The right side of the glider collapses because he puts left brake input, which lowers the right side of the glider. And when it turns, now, of course, it's top of the glider to the wind, it's going to collapse it, right? So what he needed to do back here is, as the glider comes up and he realizes that it's facing to the right, he needs to be putting sharp brake input on the left, but more importantly, running his feet to the right. Because if he runs his feet to the right, it slacks the right side of the lines, which makes it go up, pulls on the low side of the lines, which makes it go down, and now he's flying to the left. Let me fix my fireplace. Okay, yep, he blows it. Okay, on the next clip, it's this green guy, and on this one, the way that they need to move their feet is towards the glider because, as you see, the pull-up is nice and symmetrical. It's pretty good, but you see how they just stand there and they wait for the glider to come up overhead? Well, then the wind catches the glider, pulls it up really hard, and it overshoots them and flies forward. So overshoots them and does a frontal. What needs to happen here is, as that glider comes up and starts picking up energy, you need to go towards the glider deliberately. There's a difference between not pulling back on the glider and actually going towards the glider. When you go towards the glider, you take away energy from the glider so it doesn't shoot over your head. And that's what needed to happen there. Instead of anchoring your feet and staying in one place and continuing to pull on the A's, which accelerates the glider, you need to go towards the glider. Give up energy, okay? And obviously, as the person turns, her hands are totally up, which they obviously need to be in the brakes. And then as they turn, they need to be really running forward really fast to catch it, which there's a hesitation, which turns into a frontal collapse, right? So that could totally have been remedied with moving your feet. Okay, this third example here is with the blue and red UP glider, and the inflation looks pretty good, right? But at the last minute, the glider becomes left side low, and what needs to happen immediately is the guy needs to take 2 steps in that direction. Step always under the low side of the glider. We're always going under the low side of the glider. Going under the low side of the glider slacks the lines. It gives more slack to the side of the glider that is low, which allows it to rise. Okay, so what he does instead is he breaks the outside, which is fine, but he also needs to move his feet. And since he's anchored, like his feet are in cement or something, what happens is the left side of the glider is low and he's pulling on the right side of the brake. So right here, you can see that the glider is perfectly over his head, but where is the alignment here? If you look at his head is way off to the right side of the glider, meaning he's not under the center of the glider. To launch a glider properly, you need to be under the center of the glider. So when you move your feet, you're always trying to move yourself under the middle of the glider, wherever that is. If the glider comes up to one side, it doesn't matter. Just run yourself under the middle of the glider. That is what you're trying to do with your feet. And basically what happens here is he doesn't move his feet at all. He's anchored, like the glider is going to perfectly stay inflated all of the time. And he pulls the right brake. Instead of stepping over to the left, he just stands there. And what happens, he steers the glider to the right while the left side is low, which means the wind hits the left side of the glider, collapses it. It's really not that surprising. He takes a huge whack and he fitzes with it here forever. It's kind of almost funny. It's almost funny. Okay, so this video is a terrible launch, but I figure I can kind of use it actually to demonstrate. So dude's trying to do a forward. This is way back in the day too in Slovenia. Dude's trying to do a forward on a really steep hill where it's just blowing, which is hilarious. And the glider comes up totally asymmetrically. And what does he do? Almost on accident, at some point, he realizes that he needs to run under the center of the glider. You can see he's way off to the one side. The glider's totally on one side of him, but he just runs under the center of the glider and, oh, what happens? The low side comes up and it launches him almost accidentally. So that just goes to show you got to run under the low side of the glider. You have to center your body under the middle of the glider. Don't worry too much about all of the brakes and all of the lines. Those things help for sure, but the most powerful input you can do when you're kiting your glider is to move your feet. Move your feet under the center of the glider. If you literally just don't touch any lines and you just move to stay under the middle of the glider will stay above you. Let me show you a video of me nailing it here on my Xeno in Utah. A couple weeks ago, I launched and got to 17,000 feet, flew a 175 kilometer triangle, my biggest one yet. You can see the sky is very big in this clip. And watch. I wait as the glider comes up. I'm just patient. I'm patient. Once the glider inflates, you can see I'm not perfectly under the middle. Okay, so what do? I take 2 quick steps to the right before I turn, and as I turn, I've centered myself under the glider so it's going to launch overhead, right? 2 steps to the right, boop, there I go. I stay in a torpedo because I come back down, bap, bap, couple steps, bap, bap. And soon enough, I'm flying away on the Xeno and into lift. Boop, 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 boop. Sweet. As long as you are right under the middle of the glider when the glider is overhead, chances are it's going to work. So 2 tiny steps as I turn, bap, bap, lots of brake, run, sweet. Okay. The drills that you can do to make this totally embodied in your body so you have muscle memory of this, that you'd never have to think about it. First thing is kiting. When you're kiting, you should not be doing just inflation and deflation. Like a lot of people waste their time kiting because they just pull the glider up and then they set it down and they keep their feet in position and they try to just like manipulate the glider with just the brakes and the A's and that kind of thing. What you want to be doing is what I call a box drill. So if you're on flat grass, basically like set up a square and pull the glider up on one side and go forward and then go crosswind to the other corner of the box and then go downwind and then crosswind and then upwind, crosswind, downwind. Like you should be able to go left, go right, go forward, go backwards. This way you are managing the pitch of the glider to take you in any given direction. And the drill is basically if you want to go right with the glider, you have to tilt the glider to the right and then move your feet under it. And you'll start learning that if you tilt the glider over to the right and you move under it, that the glider comes up. Okay? It's really quite simple, and that's a great drill to have that as muscle memory inside of your body, so your body knows it. The other way, which is really simple, is to go to places where we kite up the hill, like at Pine Mountain here, or at a dune, or at your local paragliding site. If you just start lower and you can kite up the hill, a kiting path, any of these things, that really is where it's embodied from me, is from kiting up the hill every day, kiting across the hill, kiting around. Like when I kite, I'm not staying in the same place, I'm going places. So if you can learn how to go places while kiting, like literally, can you go left kiting? Can you go right kiting? Can you go backwards kiting? Kite up the hill kiting? That kind of stuff just is a game that embodies this knowledge into your body. So you have muscle memory, so you don't fuck it up and you don't have to think about it. Okay, the other thing here, I recorded a clip of myself launching in really high wind here the other day, and this is on my acro glider. And so what I demonstrate here is the deliberate running towards the glider. Okay, so when I'm pulling up in strong wind, I know that I'm going to take 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 steps towards the glider as the glider comes up to take energy away from it so it doesn't pluck me, so it doesn't drag me. And when you watch this clip, watch that the paraglider doesn't move, that I move under the paraglider. Okay, so I pull up. Once it gets inflated, I run towards it. I make one big brake check. But look, the glider doesn't really move, even in the frame. I go under the glider. Okay, so to take energy away from it, I go towards the glider, which slacks the lines, which if you pull on the lines, then the glider energizes. And if you give slack to the lines, the glider loses energy. So when it's strong, I am thinking about running towards the center of the glider and underneath it so that it takes energy away from it. You can see right here the last 2 steps where I know I'm about to arrive under the middle of the glider and the glider is about to arrive over my head. I know that the glider is about to pull me real hard. And so what do? I really bend my knees and I start dragging my feet and I start getting ready to turn. I'm checking the glider and I do a turn and boop, it plucks me, right? Okay, so in a high wind situation, it's even more important that you run under the middle of the glider. And if you do that, it's going to pull you up and you're going to be centered under it, pitch, roll, and yaw, and you're going to have a good launch. So the biggest, most common launch mistake that I've seen is people not moving their feet. The way to remedy that is to move your feet under the middle of the glider. The drill to practice is a box technique or a box kiting thing, or kiting around and going places, kiting as transportation as opposed to kiting as just static activity. And then the high wind interpretation is run towards the glider as it comes up to take energy away from it and be ready, because the moment that you know that you're under the middle of it and that it's over your head, it's going to pull you. It's going to pick you up and you're going to be flying. So I hope that's helpful. Thanks for watching. Send this video around and please consider becoming a patron on Patreon. I don't have any ads on this channel. It's all demonetized. I am donation-based only. So if you like this and you want to be part of the paragliding community that supports more learning and perspective, consider becoming a patron. Patreon.com/airintheair. Really appreciate that. Thanks so much for watching. See you in the next episode.